Welcome to Asking for a Friend. I'm Jess O'Reilly, your friendly neighborhood sexologist. I'm here to help you feel better about yourself, your relationships, and your sex lives. Today we are talking about the very tangible G-spot as well as the often elusive squirting. Before we go any further, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share below. And I'm so excited to have two fabulous guests here with me today. We have Carlyle Jansen, sex and relationship expert and owner of the adult boutique Good for Her, as well as the amazing therapist, author, pleasure, and intimacy advocate, Ruth Neustifter. Welcome to Asking for a Friend.
So excited to be here, especially with both of you.
Yes.
Always fun.
Let's talk G-zones, G-spots, and squirting. Now, the G-spot is actually a bit of a misnomer because it's not a spot, it's not a magic button, it's more of a zone, an area. So I think it's better called the G-zone. It's a series of nerve endings and tissues, and what's really exciting about the G-spot and the reason it can lead to more full body pleasure and perhaps the big O, it has to do with its innervation. So we believe that deep extensions of the vagus nerve are innervating the G-spot. You don't have to memorize that, but the exciting thing is when you touch it, it can create waves of pleasure across the body. So let's talk G-zone. When did you learn about it? When did you first try it?
I was such a late bloomer with pleasure for my anatomy to begin with. So Catholic school person, and so it was quite a few years before I was even aware that people with my anatomy, with vulvas, have orgasms, much less what goes into it, no pun intended.
Or doesn't need to go into it?
Exactly. And so G-spot stuff came like, no pun intended again, into my 20s somewhere, my late 20s probably. And I had this feeling or awareness that like my orgasms were trying to do something bigger, but I didn't know what to do with that. And so when I finally got to the point of learning how, I actually learned how from educational porn.
Oh.
And so it was getting some tips on like different ways to kind of hold your body and think about it, which I can totally go into if you want. And when it finally happened, I was sure that I had just peed everywhere. And
so did you like it?
You know, I turned to my partner to see what their reaction was first.
Oh.
And they didn't know what to do, but deep down I was like, I want to do this again.
Did you do rock, paper, scissors to see who had to do the laundry?
It was my bed, and it ended up being me, but yeah.
That's why you should never host, right?
Right?
There you go.
Put down a tarp, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I didn't like it at first. To me, it felt like pressure on my bladder, which makes sense because it's sort of sandwiched between the vaginal canal and the bladder. How about you?
Yeah, well, and if we're not aroused in particular, right, then we're like, oh, let's see if that works, right? We have to be aroused for that area to engorge with blood. So for me, I was also a late bloomer, late 20s, had not had an orgasm, went to workshop on learning about anatomy and pleasure, and that's where I learned about the G-spot and was like, oh, that's different. Like at first was kind of this like, oh, interesting, and then, oh, oh, that works, right?
It can be weird at first. So if you
for
reach in and stimulate the G-spot right now, I'm probably going to kick you away
Of
because
course.
it doesn't really feel good.
You're not
because
aroused.
I'm not aroused. You're not aroused, right?
Yeah.
Not aroused.
Yeah.
Just checking in. There's no arousal here.
Yeah.
And then once you get aroused, and as you said, blood flows to the area, it can start to feel really sensitive. So let's talk about where it is. What is your simplest route to the G-spot?
Through the vagina. So I describe it as anywhere from a couple of knuckles to a full finger inside, reaching towards the belly button.
Okay.
So if your partner is on their back, then it's upwards towards the ceiling. If they're on their stomach, it's downwards. If they're standing up, towards the belly button. And different people like different kinds of stimulation of that area, though.
Yep,
As someone who has toys in their life, I'm sure you hear about that a lot.
Yeah, we need to ask you about the toys. So the simple version, I think, is if you want to get the G-spot, you're going to reach into the vaginal canal, curl up toward the tummy wall.
Yep.
It feels a little bit different than the rest of the vaginal canal, right?
It does. It's rippled and it's squishy, right? And deeper in, it's more flat. But you know, I find 2 fingers is good. One feels pokey.
Oh yes, nobody wants
Right?
it to be like probed
Nobody
by
wants to be
aliens.
poked. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2 fingers, and it's interesting. Everyone's different, right? You describe like 2 knuckles to a finger. For a lot of people, I find it's like barely inside.
Just in, yeah.
And I found in particular, after having 2 kids, everything's sort of a little closer to the opening now.
Okay,
Right?
it's crawling its way out.
Yeah,
No,
and so
hopefully not.
many people, though, I find if they haven't found it, it's often they've tried deeper and they haven't tried shallower. And so, what I often do is I say it's not necessarily about pushing in. Very often with toys, people think it's about going in as far as you can go. With something bulbous like this, it's more about pulling out. Right? Just like this motion and a pulling out, and just at the opening for some people, or deeper, right? It's somewhere along that length of the urethral sponge that follows the urethra. Like a toilet paper roll, right? Like you've got the urethra and then the sponge is like all of the sheets around it that are nice and squishy when it's filled with blood.
You like that kind of pulling out motion?
Yeah.
I like a bit of a rocking motion because you have another toy there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you have this one
one's
here.
awesome.
So and this one looks very intimidating to people. If you just hold
Yes.
it up, I think
Yeah.
it can be really scary for people, but only an inch to an inch and a half.
Well, that's what I love about it, is it actually won't go in so far.
Yes, you're
Right?
only putting that lower arm in, and
Yeah.
that toy is really great for rocking back and
Rocking.
forth.
So you get your clitoris and your G-spot, and your clitoris and your G-spot, which you want to have. A lot of people want to have a little bit of clitoral stimulation to keep that arousal. What sometimes people will do is they'll get aroused and then they stop, and then they go looking for the G-spot and the arousal goes down.
But you
right?
like that clitoral play. A
want
lot
a
of
little
us
bit of
like
both.
clitoral play.
Yeah.
So we can't
Works
not
for
show
many
the
of us.
vulvas. You brought your vulva. The vulva is everything on the outside. The lips, so you have 2 sets of lips. When you open up the lips, you find an area called the vestibule, and that looks a little bit shinier, right? Because it's a different type of tissue. It almost looks a little oily. And on the vestibule, you'll find the entrance to the vagina and a little hole that you pee out of. Now, up at the top, we have the head of the clit, but most people think that's the whole clit. Did you bring a clit as well? Of course. Oh, yours is already bent. So the clit is partly external, just that little kind of nodule pokes through, but it's also internal. It has the legs, the bulbs, and it's made of erectile tissue. And some people will say that the G-zone is an extension of the clit,
Right.
and that's just fine. Like,
Yeah.
call it anything
Yeah.
you want.
They're all connected.
Okay, so
right?
now we know how to find the G-zone. You're reaching inside the vaginal canal with a couple of fingers or a toy.
Yep.
And what are we going to do with it? What are some techniques for stimulating the G-spot?
Okay, so if I'm going to explore this on my own, especially as a person with a fat body, reach can be a little bit of a difficult thing, especially
Okay.
depending on stomach size, things like that. So for me, using my fingers is not going to be comfortable because I need to have my torso straight. Sitting like this is not going to work because the way everything changes.
Okay.
So I'll lay back, propped up on some pillows, and I'll use a toy with a strong curve.
Okay.
I like a metal toy so I can do a little temperature play. It's firm. They're heavy, but you can get some really good leverage and pressure with it. And even though it's heavy, it's easier on my wrist with the pressure. For me, but a laying back, pillows as props, and definitely I don't want to worry about what kind of mess or sounds or anything, so I have to have the environment comfortable.
Ah, that makes sense. Okay, and so you mentioned pressure. I know that you talk a lot about pressure on the G-spot.
Yeah, and so for people who nothing really works there, right? Sometimes we need pressure because the urethral sponge is around the urethra. The G-spot is not in the vagina. You feel it through the wall of the vagina. So some people, gentle is good, and others, pressure is what you need, like a metal toy, which are great.
Yeah, I love a metal toy. I love that weight, and then also you can
Yeah.
warm it up, cool it down. I got a couple of techniques for you. If you want something a little bit more gentle, maybe you're not quite aroused yet, you can reach in, press up toward that tummy wall, and kind of just tick-tock back and forth. Now, I'm tick-tocking kind of wide. The vaginal canal is not wide, so it's going to be a subtle movement. I just want you to be able to see it. Yeah, you watching with no pants. Yeah, I see you. You can also do kind of a pulsing motion up against that area. You can do an open and close motion. There is no right, there is no wrong. No 2 bodies are the same. And in fact, we want to hear from you. So Allysin Chaynes went to the streets and asked you about your experiences with G-spots and squirting.
I have some questions. I am asking for a friend. Have you ever squirted before? Yes, I have.
And was it on your own or with a partner?
With a partner.
And was it with the partner you have now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Is that why you've kept him around?
Maybe.
That's my boy Luke! Have you ever squirted before? Would you aspire to? Do you look forward to it one day? Hopefully. I know it makes people uncomfortable, but listen, there's a whole underrepresented field of squirters out there, and we need to find all of them so they can teach us their secrets.
Honestly, yeah, because I don't even know if that is actually, like, does that happen? I don't know.
It happens. Oh, it happens. Have you ever experienced the joys of squirting?
Yes.
Yeah? More than once?
Yes.
On a regular basis, would you say?
Yeah.
Ooh, I love that. Own that with pride. We're pro squirting here. Have you ever squirted, Emma?
Yes.
I love that for you. Is it a regular occurrence or more of a rarity kind of a treat?
On my own, regular. But if someone else does it, that's a treat.
That's impressive. Squirting, fact or fiction?
Fact.
Have you ever made someone squirt?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Ben, have you ever made anyone squirt before?
I don't think so.
Okay. I think you would know. Maddie, have you ever experienced squirting before?
I have.
On a regular basis?
Yeah.
Wow.
Kind of embarrassingly so.
No. Loud and proud. We don't do embarrassed here. How do you feel about squirting?
I want to, but I've never.
Never have?
I'm more of a creamer.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Have you ever squirted before?
No.
Have you ever made someone else squirt? Yes. G-spots, fact or fiction?
Fact.
So have you ever been able to find your G-spot or had someone else find it?
Billy found it.
I was gonna say, Billy, do you know you have a G-spot as well?
I do know.
Have you ever found your G-spot?
I haven't found it. She found it.
Oof, damn. What do you think of the G-spot on a man? Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of it.
Ever wandered close to it?
No.
Okay. How do we feel about the male G-spot?
I mean, I think it's super important. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like where the pleasure is. I think every man needs to experience what it's like to get the G-spot stimulated.
Hard agree.
Yeah, it's much
Couldn't
needed,
agree more.
much needed. It's also like, it's a completely different orgasm.
Yeah.
Completely different, and
It's
it's
a
much
whole
better.
different beast.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's eye-opening, amongst other things. No, I'm kidding.
Whole closing, eye-opening.
Full closing. Incredible. Oh, you've all just made me so happy.
I love that we're talking about this. I love that we're taking the conversations from the back room to the living room to the streets. Now, I know what everybody wants to know is, how do I squirt? And we've got the expertise here to explain it. So how do you even begin to explore squirting?
So I think the first thing is that for most people, you have to find your G-spot and enjoy it. And then you need to spend a lot of time getting aroused and spend a lot of time on the G-spot. Not 5 minutes, not 10 minutes, maybe 20 or 30 minutes, really what they call milking the G-spot for a long period of time. Lots of arousal, maybe clitoral stimulation at the same time. And when you feel this like fullness, like, for a lot of people, it has to come out in order to feel it. And so when you're inside, then you come out and you stimulate the urethra. It's sort of like saying, okay, here, come out here. And the person pushes, and that often does the trick.
That's a really good point about pushing, because so many of us, when we have those clitoral orgasms, we're kind of tensing up. But with G-spot orgasms, we hear that it's more of a bearing down, like you're pushing things out of your vagina.
Yeah, and I run into that a lot when I'm doing therapy with couples or all numbers of relationships, right? Regardless of the genders involved. If folks are struggling to have orgasms with or without a G-spot, there's often this feeling of like performance anxiety.
For sure.
Is it going to happen? But also, is it going to be messy? Am I going to pass gas? Am I going to pee? Yeah, do I smell okay?
Let's stop right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so is it pee?
Who cares?
Good answer.
No, I mean, the scientific studies that I've seen say that it doesn't, it sometimes has traces of pee, but actually mostly, is made up of what's similar to comes out of the prostate.
Right, it's that prostatic fluid. And then anyone who's doing like a sniff test to see if it's pee,
It's not.
It's different.
it's okay, because they're probably into that.
And there's a likelihood that stuff that comes out probably is coming out of the bladder. but it's a dual use or multi-use organ. It can do lots of different stuff. So just because liquid comes out of it doesn't mean it's urine. It's urine if it has like urea and other kinds of stuff in it. And there may be like a little leftover pee in there or something like that. But also whether I'm my own lover or with somebody else, I want a partner who's like, was that good for you? Then great. Who cares what it is?
Right. What was this fluid? Like if they come with a little testing kit, that's not the partner for me.
This is my moment that I'm sharing with myself or 20 other people or whatever, you know. I want us all to be happy and celebrating about it. Clearly my body's excited. If I had an orgasm that was so good that I just like lost control and a bunch of liquid happened, like great, like let's all high five.
I'm glad you bring up the losing control, because a lot of people will hold back and not have a G-spot orgasm or not squirt because they're tensing up, which is also okay. Let's be really clear.
For sure.
You don't have to do everything. You don't need to say, oh, I've had a clitoral orgasm and an anal orgasm and a prostate orgasm and a G-spot orgasm and a nipple orgasm and a, I don't know, fantasy orgasm and a left nostril orgasm. You don't have to have all the orgasms. Do what feels good for you in the moment.
I find though that like it becomes sort of the latest party trick, right? Everybody's so concerned with how do I squirt? How do I get my partner to squirt? I'm not a good lover unless I squirt. And it's really unfortunate because it becomes performative and you're not enjoying it in the same kind of way.
Or like being a good lover is really about being present, being thoughtful, being conscientious, knowing your own body, being, you said the word curious. Like I don't know if there's anything I want more than curiosity in my lover. I know that we've been a little bit ruined by porn, right? Because in porn, it is performative. It is a highly visual medium. So when they do have a squirt or orgasm, or sometimes they fake, believe it or not, some things in porn are fake.
For sure.
Sometimes they'll make sure that it kind of sprays across the room, and you might just have a dribble. Like many people have squirted, and they've never noticed. If you get up and you've had the sex, and there's a big wet spot after the sex, you've squirted. Everybody thinks that squirting is the ultimate orgasm. Squirting, in fact, is not necessarily an orgasm.
You can squirt and not orgasm. You can orgasm and not squirt. You can squirt with G-spot stimulation. Some people squirt with clitoral stimulation, or I've even heard of nipple stimulation. Orgasm and squirting or ejaculation are two separate events in all bodies, actually.
Exactly.
But a lot of people think they go together, but not necessarily.
No, for some people, squirting is just more laundry.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. There are people who do legitimately squirt volumes and distances. I wouldn't say that it's the like standard to hold yourself to. And there's also a lot of lube involved. We didn't even talk about that. But you don't want to get a friction burn while you're like pressing and rubbing and stuff.
Lube is essential. Absolutely critical.
Do you have a favorite lube? I do.
I love a silicone lube because I'm now menopausal, and you know things are dry, and silicone does not dry out.
Can I ask you, has your experience with the G-spot or squirting changed with menopause?
Yeah, it has. For sure, you know, I need to take a little more time.
Okay.
And I need to be a little more careful. And sometimes I'll even now use the insertive condom, known as the FC2 or the female condom.
Right.
So it goes inside, and that just reduces some of the friction. So I get the good friction and not the friction that feels uncomfortable. Yeah, I mean, certainly my desires and what feels pleasurable has changed. You know, I don't want things that are as big as I used to like. But the pleasure's still there.
Well, I think that's so important that you're recognizing the changes in your body. And then we also have to be okay with them, because I think a lot of the hiccups that occur post-menopause have to do with, we have expectations of one way sex ought to be. It's like if you ate the same meal every day for your whole life, you wouldn't know what to do when you ran out of that spaghetti or whatever it is. And so we have to be open to those changes. One kind of, I would say, shortcut, like at the end, you're already riled up. If you want to play with the G-spot and play with squirting, you're probably going to curl your fingers into the vaginal canal. Some people like some pressure on their stomach.
Yes.
Right? Because you're squishing the G-spot
Yep.
between the bladder and the vaginal canal. So it looks sort of like this. I'm doing it very slowly, but it's going to probably be faster once you're aroused. And then you mentioned pulling out, because you probably don't want that pressure sustained. Maybe rubbing on the outside around the urethra. Bearing down, relaxing. It sounds like a lot of things, and that's always my fear when we have these conversations. Like, I don't want to be like, do this and then this and then this. What you said,
listen to your body.
Explore for pleasure, see how it feels. One thing that also came up on the street was the prostate.
Yes.
which is its own version of the G-spot. Tell us a little bit about the prostate.
Well, it's kind of analogous, right? I mean, our bodies at conception, right, are really the same, and then they sort of diverge. But in all bodies, you've got the bladder, and then you have the prostate, and you have the urethra that goes through it and comes out, right? So they have a similar pleasure function, and they also both produce fluid.
And how would you get to the prostate?
I find it's a little bit deeper.
Okay.
And often one finger is fine.
Through the anal canal.
Through the anal
anus,
canal,
yeah.
yes. So you're going up the butt. I'm always adamant for butt play. You're doing lots of external play first, lots and lots and lots. Get the person relaxed, unless they're really used to butt play. And similarly, you can do just a pressure like this, a windshield wiper, circles. And I find doesn't necessarily need a lot of pressure. Again, with arousal, can feel a lot better. Some people don't feel anything unless they're really aroused. Some people with prostates want their penis stimulated at the same time, and some people don't. Mm-hmm. Some people will get an erection. Some people will lose an erection.
That's very important.
Yes, absolutely.
Because
Yeah.
people get freaked out. We think that an erection, especially in penises, although let's just say clitorises get erections too,
Yeah, for sure.
but we think that the erection is the sign of arousal. But you can
Right.
be highly aroused and have an erection or not have an erection. You can be riding the bus and there's some wind and you get an erection. And you get those,
Right.
the technical term is NRB, no reason boners.
Right. Yes, medical
Very
language.
technical. Yes.
But oftentimes with prostate play, people will lose their erection and then freak out.
Yeah, or their partner freaks out and thinks, oh, I've done something wrong, right? The whole performative side of sex.
Yes. All right, so you're talking about partnered play oftentimes. Do you recommend
Or
that people
self-play.
try it by themselves to begin with?
I think it's good to know your body. You're much more relaxed, much more comfortable knowing your reactions, where things are. You can instruct a partner, right? Like, okay, I think it's here. Yeah, you've got it. It's a little further out. It's a little deeper in, a little more pressure, less pressure, whatever.
Yeah, anything
So-
new is often easier by
Oh, for
yourself.
sure. Yeah.
And pee is one of the concerns, but the other is just this self-consciousness piece, isn't it, right? What is my partner going to think? How are they going to feel? What's happening in my body? So how do you overcome some of that? I mean, it's really tied to shame, isn't it?
Shame and a lack of education, right? So people might not understand that sex is an animal act. It's meant to be messy. It's meant to have funny sounds. Yeah, you're gonna fart. Everybody's gonna fart. Well, let's all fart. Fart
Or
party.
queef.
Right?
When we release
Absolutely.
air from the vaginal canal.
Absolutely. What do your orgasms sound like from your mouth? What noises do you make? What is your hair doing? There's all these worries about stuff. How's my lighting? But people worry, will the partner, if they're giving you oral sex and you're above them, will you drown them? Will they be disgusted? Do they know that there can be a lot of liquid? Are they expecting a lot more liquid or a lot more sound or a lot more? Some people's orgasms are really quiet, even with G-spot.
Yes.
So, all of that is, well, what is it supposed to look like instead of being, we're two mammals doing what mammals do.
I love it.
Or three mammals or six, whatever, have a good time, or one. But so there's a lot of this worry, and I see that in the relationships that comes to me, in therapy and workshops and things like that. Everybody's trying to do it right instead of have fun. And there's so much pressure to not be gross, stay sexy, whatever. To which I would say, how fun is it for you? How connected do you feel? Maybe fun or connection isn't your goal. Maybe you want to feel rested afterwards or something. Then how restful is it for you? So all of that together, but also a partner who's reassuring. And that doesn't mean you have to be okay with everything that happens.
Right.
If I have somebody, they're riding my face and there's a whole lot of liquid and I'm not breathing well, absolutely. I want to do a little turn to the side or tap and let them know we need to adjust. I don't have to be okay with everything. Right? And that's a compliment. I come out of there gasping. That means I wanted to stay there, right? So, you can have that interaction. You don't have to be okay with everything, but you can still be positive and kind and affirming, even if you don't know what happened, right? And so, stuff comes out of our bodies. And there's a lot of culture to that too.
Yes.
So depending on who we are, our background, our heritage, our race, our culture, there's different expectations. Generally, people who are assigned female at birth are taught to not have leaky bodies.
Right.
Breast milk is bad. Spit is bad. Tears are weakness.
I'm a sweaty
peeing.
mess.
Yeah,
I just want to announce that I'm a sweaty mess.
Let's be sweaty together.
Well, it's funny because I don't brag about how sweaty I am, but people brag about how much they squirt.
Yeah, how
and
juicy.
it's just a natural bodily function.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I get calls or emails. They're like, Dr. Jazz, help me out. Something's wrong with my wife's vagina. But I love her so much. They always say I love her so much, right? I can say anything after that. You know, I did all the techniques and she doesn't like it. Dude, I mean, I don't know what she likes. I don't know her vagina. I don't want to know her vagina. Guess who knows her vagina? She knows her vagina.
Right.
So if something doesn't feel good for her, then you don't have to do it. There are the body is a wonderland.
There are so many different erogenous zones. And, you know, I often talk about nipples, right? So for people who have vaginas, the nipples are supposed to be like, you know, the grand central station that's going to get you to where you're going next. But for lots of us, it's no different than the elbow.
Right.
And the same thing
Do you want to
with
suck my
G-spots.
elbow?
Yeah, right. So same thing with G-spots,
Yes.
same thing with the cervix, same thing with the prostate, different parts of the penis, right? We're all different, and so there's no one size fits all for everyone.
And you're not missing out. If you don't do it all, you're not missing out as long as you're open and enjoying and doing what feels good in your body.
Yes, absolutely.
Now we have some of your questions. Apparently you are asking for a friend. And our first question comes to us from Rachel. Rachel wants to know, does squirting mean a better quality orgasm?
Not necessarily. Some people like it more, some people like it less. And the reality is you can have great sex without even an orgasm.
That's
or
right.
squirting.
That's a whole other conversation, isn't it? Okay, we have some more questions as well. Ben wants to know, can all women squirt?
You know, we don't really know the answer to that, and it's not just women, it's anyone with a vagina. So possibly most can, but the research, guess what, just isn't happening with this body.
Where is the money for squirting research? Is that coming at the federal, the provincial, the state level, municipal? We'll have to see where that money is. All right, Joanna wants to know, how do I talk to my partner about exploring my body with me so I can squirt?
So I think talking to your partner is about saying, this is what I love. This is what I love that you do already.
Yes.
This is what I'd like more of. And can we explore this other thing? I've heard about squirting. I don't know if I can. I want to try the G-spot. Are you open? Can I show you my erogenous zones? And can we be open to where things go? It might work out really well. I might squirt. I might really like it, and I might not. And I want to be okay with it.
I mean, a great way to start the conversation is to go ahead and share this video with them. Share it with all of your friends. All right, we have some more questions for you here. Paul wants to know, my girlfriend doesn't squirt ever. Am I doing something wrong?
Paul, I don't know if you're doing something wrong or not. I would say just cut loose together with consent. And if that's hard to do with your partner, find somewhere where you can work on that intimate communication with each other. Start with taking some workshops, watching shows like this. Maybe a therapist is a good idea. You don't have to be in trouble to see a therapist. You could just want to enhance things.
Yes, and I think that there's so much pressure to do so many things, but squirting isn't a sign that they're enjoying themselves. And a lack of squirting is not necessarily an absence of enjoyment. So you're going to have to ask her what she's into. And we're talking about the mechanics here today, but there is so much more to sex than just a spot and a specific experience. There's the intimate, the relational, the communication, the emotional piece. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. All right, I have one more question for us. I would love to get my boyfriend to be open to my finding his G-spot. How do I talk him into it? So G-spot, P-spots, how do we talk to them about it?
Yeah, I think part of it is asking them about what do they like and what do they want more of. I love to play a game called 3 Oranges and a Lemon. So 3 things that I love about sex and 1 thing that I want to explore.
I was thinking more of insertive, but I'm really glad I'm really glad that's where you went with it.
Yeah, and so, you know, maybe it's that both of us explore our butts together, right? We can both enjoy, and because the butt is the equal opportunity orifice, we can discover things about your butt. If your anatomy is different, there'll be some similarities and some differences. So let's do that together. And I always recommend the first time is just external.
Right. Now you talk about sex with clients all day, every day. I'm sure you take a break at the end of the day. What's the most common question or concern you get around this topic?
So I have had several people say to me, I learned how to squirt. How do I stop? Because
just plug it up.
Always a mess, right? And so sometimes I say, be careful what you ask for, right? When people are so adamant about learning how to squirt, it's like, okay, but then you need to deal with a mess, which is fine and good. But sometimes people don't know how to stop.
So how do you stop?
So part of it, unfortunately, is kind of learning that inward pull.
Okay.
And sometimes it's about just always being prepared.
Okay, right, that wet blanket, or that, what do you call it?
Waterproof
a waterproof blanket.
Yeah.
And by the way, they're not like plastic. They feel fleecy.
No,
they feel like
they
a
feel
thick
fabulous.
fleece. Yes,
Yeah.
I absolutely
They're
love
nice
them.
now.
Yes.
It's advancement in the field.
Yes. Technology, sex tech at its best. All right. And for you, what are some common questions you're getting?
Similar. So people worry that they're squirting too much or too little, but oftentimes it's, what do I do about the mess?
Okay.
Or I think there might be a mess when I do this. What do I
Okay.
do? So those waterproof blankets are so good. They can be really expensive.
Okay.
A picnic blanket that's waterproof can be a lot more affordable. It may be a little crunchy sounding.
Okay.
You can throw towels down. There's certainly people who soak right through them. Being in the shower or tub, if that's comfortable, is really great. Wearing clothes or whatever the case may be, that's okay to get wet, or having a change with you. Even just knowing that that's a thing that's likely to happen can help you just kind of position and save the couch, or
Exactly, when you're coming to that moment. Right, we
Yes.
think about that for penises all the time.
Sure.
When you know, like, that point of ejaculatory inevitability, which is basically what it is, you can move to a place that maybe you don't have to sleep in, or that place that's easier to clean up.
Yeah, yeah, and they make large blankets, tiny blankets. Some are very portable. In a bind, you can get something some people call chucks or puppy pads if you're getting them at PetSmart.
Okay.
They're waterproof on one side, they're somewhat absorbent on the top side, and then they're disposable. So it's a common medical supply. If you go to swingers clubs, then oftentimes you'll see those around, things like that too.
Puppy pads repurposed.
Yeah, you can get them from Costco in the pet section.
Now, I know every body is different and every combination of bodies are different, but if there's a position that works for you or you've heard works for G-spots and squirting, is there something you can share with us?
That combination of being able to really relax and let go when it happens.
Okay.
So standing up wouldn't work for me.
Okay.
And also whatever kind of position helps you like really tighten to bring your G-spot against that pressure too.
Okay.
So for a lot of people, that's something with the knees up. On your back with your knees up, you know, with straps, assistance, just because you're flexible, whatever.
So you're making me work.
Or you can get like lovely, have your partner hold your legs for you.
Right. I need a second person.
Or third or fourth, just, you know, some helpers. Or perhaps being on your knees like doggy style or something. If your knees are not something that you want to lean on, you might be over a couch or something for some extra body support.
Okay.
And that way you are well supported, but also you have muscles that can squeeze a little tighter, basically, to help you like really work that stimulation from the inside.
Okay, so I'm not starfishing, just this one time. Is there another position you can add into the mix?
Yeah, I would just sort of elaborate on that, you know, you're aiming either the dildo or the penis, the strap-on, you know, to your G-spot, right? So if you're lying on your back, often sort of instead of being like right over top of your partner, you're sort of more in a V, and getting that shallow or deep, depending as you like it, because so much of intercourse is like, oh, it's got to go faster and deeper. Sometimes that feels painful. Sometimes that's not so good. Sometimes it's about pulling out against the head, right? Or if you're in doggy style, so you're like this, coming from behind, you're aiming down.
Yes, that
right?
seems
You're
to make
aiming
sense.
down, and again, might be shallow, might be deeper.
Of course, any position that works for your body is going to be the best position. I have loved this conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
This has been so fun.
Yeah, I love it, and we need to keep the conversations going. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Hopefully you can find your G-spot. You can explore squirting with zero pressure. Before you go, please make sure you subscribe, like, comment kindly, share with your friends so that we're sharing the love, opening the conversation. We're here to start conversations, but it's up to you to keep them going. Wishing you many happy endings. Thank you so much for being here.
It was so good.
And it was so much fun. Yeah,
Thank you for bringing your vulva.
Both of you.